The glow of Luxe Bistro was intoxicating. Candlelight flickering off crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes framing floor-to-ceiling windows, and the soft hum of a string quartet weaving through the chatter of the city's elite. It was a place where wealth wasn't just displayed, it was performed. In the midst of this, opulence moved Emily Carter, a waitress whose starched black uniform and practiced smile masked the ache in her feet and the fire in her chest. She glided toward Table 7, where Mrs. Evelyn Hamilton, dripping in pearls and disdain, sat with her son, James, whose bored smirk never left his face as he scrolled his phone. Emily set down a glass of sparkling water with the precision of a surgeon, careful not to disturb the pristine linen tablecloth. "About time," Mrs. Hamilton snapped, her eyes fixed on her menu. "Do you always move like you're wading through mud?" Emily's cheeks flushed, but her voice stayed soft, steady. "Apologies, ma'am. It's a busy evening." James looked up, his sneer cutting deeper than his mother's words. "They must have scraped you off the street for this gig." The insult landed like a fist to her gut. Emily's fingers tightened around her tray, the edges biting into her palms. "Can I get you anything else?" Mrs. Hamilton waved her off like a bothersome insect. "Just don't ruin our meal with your incompetence." As Emily turned to leave, her sleeve caught the edge of a silver fork. It clattered to the floor, the sound slicing through the dining room like a gunshot. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. Mrs. Hamilton gasped as if Emily had spilled wine on her dress. "Clumsy girl," she hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "This is why places like this shouldn't hire riffraff." James leaned back, chuckling. "Stick to flipping burgers at some diner, sweetheart." Snickers rippled through the room, each laugh a needle in Emily's skin. Her jaw clenched, but she forced out, "I'll fetch a new fork," and fled to the kitchen before the tears burning her eyes could fall. Inside, the clatter of pots and the hiss of sizzling pans enveloped her. The sous chef, Michael Brooks, caught her expression and sighed. "Hamilton again?" Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Forget them," Michael said, tossing her a clean rag. "They're just money with no soul. You're better than their nonsense." But Emily wasn't just wounded. She was exhausted. Exhausted by the sneers, the casual cruelty, the daily grind of being seen as less. As she wiped down a counter, a dangerous thought sparked. What if I could make them eat their words? That night, Emily trudged through the city's underbelly to her one-room apartment, where the walls bore water stains like battle scars, and the ceiling fan creaked in protest. The air smelled of damp and despair. Her father, Thomas Carter, sat hunched in a sagging armchair, the hiss of his oxygen tank a constant reminder of their fragility. "Late shift again, sweetheart," he rasped, his voice thin but warm. Emily forced a smile, hiding the day's wounds. "Just earning a bit extra, Dad." She'd never let him see her break. As she warmed leftover stew in a dented pot, her mind drifted to a different time. 4 years ago, she'd been a college junior, majoring in accounting, her nights filled with textbooks and dreams of a corner office. Her mother, Clara, had been the family's anchor, running a small tailoring shop that smelled of fresh cotton and her jasmine perfume. Clara's laughter could light up their cramped home, and she'd always said, "Emily, you're destined for big things." Then came the fire. Faulty wiring in their rented shop sparked a blaze that devoured everything. Clara's shop, her life, and the family's stability. Thomas, who'd rushed in to save her, survived, but with lungs scarred by smoke. Hospital bills, funeral costs, and relentless debt crushed them. Emily dropped out of college, trading her dreams for survival. She cleaned houses, folded laundry in a sweaty factory, and finally landed at Luxe Bistro, where the tips were decent, but the cost to her pride was steep. Those tips, though, barely covered Thomas's oxygen tanks and medications. Every dollar she earned was swallowed by rent, bills, or the loan sharks, who circled like vultures. She was trapped in a cycle of scraping by, her future shrinking with every shift. A knock at the door pulled her back. Mrs. Ellen Wilson, their elderly neighbor, stood there with a bowl of homemade pudding. "For you and Thomas," she said, her smile kind but weary. Emily's throat tightened. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. You didn't have to." Mrs. Wilson's eyes softened, seeing too much. "When will you live for you, Emily? You can't carry the world forever." Emily looked away, the question stinging. She didn't know if she'd ever have the chance to find out. The next morning, Emily arrived at Luke's Bistro an hour early, her feet throbbing from the previous night's double shift. She was smoothing her uniform when Mr. Richard Thompson, the restaurant's owner, appeared by the staff lockers, his face a storm cloud. "Emily, my office now." The walk to his cramped office felt like a march to the gallows. Inside, he slammed a complaint form onto his cluttered desk. "Mrs. Hamilton called last night. Says you were insolent and incompetent." Emily's stomach twisted. "That's not true. She insulted me and—" "I don't care," Thompson roared, his face reddening. "Her husband's buying this place next month, and they're already planning changes. One more complaint, Emily, and you're gone before they even sign the papers." Her heart pounded. This job was their only lifeline. Without it, there'd be no oxygen for Thomas, no rent, no food. The weight of it pressed against her ribs, stealing her breath. That afternoon, while serving a table near the Hamiltons, she overheard James's smug whisper, "Dad's replacing the whole staff with sophisticated servers. No more charity cases like her." Mrs. Hamilton nodded, her lips curling. "This place needs a higher standard. It's embarrassing." Emily's grip on her notepad tightened until her knuckles ached. She forced herself to keep moving, to keep smiling, but the words festered like a wound. That night, as she counted her meager tips at home, Thomas's coughs grew sharper, more desperate. She rushed to his side, her pulse racing. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. "Dad, hang on," she whispered, dialing an ambulance with trembling hands. At the ER, the doctor's verdict was a knife to her chest. "His lungs are deteriorating. He needs a new medication, $150 a month minimum." Emily's knees nearly buckled. That was almost half her salary. She nodded numbly, promising to find a way. But inside, she was unraveling. As dawn broke, she sat on the hospital steps, staring at her cracked phone screen. 5 missed calls from Thompson. She didn't need to call back to know he was furious she'd missed the morning shift. Tears slipped down her cheeks, each one heavy with hopelessness. She was trapped in a brutal choice: lose her job and watch her father fade, or keep her job and endure abuse until the Hamiltons fired her anyway. There was no escape. Then, her thumb brushed her phone's gallery, pulling up an old photo. Clara, beaming in her shop, her eyes full of fire. Emily's breath caught as her mother's last words echoed. "There's something in my sewing box. For you." She'd always thought it was a keepsake, a locket, maybe, or a letter. But what if it was something else? Something that could change everything. Emily raced home, her heart hammering. She knelt by her bed, pulling out the dusty sewing box Clara had cherished. Her fingers fumbled through spools of thread and loose needles until they found a small metal tin tucked in the corner. Inside, a brass key, a faded photo of Clara with a woman in a sharp suit, and a yellow document labeled Carter versus Skylark Developers. Her hands shook as she read. Years ago, Clara had poured their family's savings into a land deal with Skylark Developers, believing it would secure their future. The company had vanished with the money, leaving her with nothing but a worthless contract. But Clara hadn't given up. She'd hired a lawyer, fought for years, and won a settlement, 20% of the developed property's value. She died before she could claim it. The photo's caption named the woman, Laura Bennett, attorney at law. Emily tracked her down to a modest office downtown. When she walked in, Bennett's eyes widened. "You're Clara's daughter. You have her fire." Bennett slid a file across her desk. "Your mother's case was a victory. The court awarded her $1.8 million, locked in a bank account until her heir. You claimed it." Emily's breath caught. $1.8 million? Bennett nodded, handing her the key. "It's in a locker at First National Bank. Your mother fought for this to give you a future." At the bank, Emily's knees weakened as the manager showed her the balance. $1,924,731. Enough to save Thomas. Enough to buy a new life. Enough to turn the tables. Tucked in the locker was a note in Clara's elegant handwriting. "Emily, my heart, this is your wings. Fly high and never let them clip you. Mom." Tears streamed down Emily's face, but they weren't born of sorrow. They were fuel. She felt her mother's strength surging through her, a wildfire ready to burn down every obstacle. That night, she sat at her wobbly kitchen table, a blank notebook open before her. At the top, she wrote, "My empire." Then she dialed Thompson's number. "Emily," he growled, clearly annoyed, "you're on thin ice after today." "I'm buying Lux Bistro," she interrupted, her voice steady as stone. "Cash, full price. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. He laughed, harsh and disbelieving. "With what? Your tip jar?" "Bring the deed," she said, and hung up before he could mock her further. At 9 a.m., Emily strode through Lux Bistro's front doors, not in her waitress uniform, but in a tailored navy blazer, her hair pulled back, her gaze sharp and unyielding. The hostess, Sophie Miller, did a double take. "Emily, what's going on?" "Mr. Thompson's expecting me," Emily said smoothly, gliding toward the private dining room. Inside, Thompson sat with his lawyer, a smug grin on his face. "Let's make this quick. What's your offer, kid?" Emily placed a sleek black folder on the table. $3 million wired to your account by end of day." Thompson's grin faltered. His lawyer snatched the folder, scanning the bank drafts and financial statements inside. This is legitimate." Emily leaned forward, her voice calm but commanding. "One condition, the staff stays, every single one, with a 15% raise effective immediately." Thompson's eyes narrowed. The Hamiltons specifically wanted to replace the Hamiltons, Emily cut in, "are no longer relevant. Sign the papers." The lawyer whispered urgently in Thompson's ear. After a tense pause, Thompson scrawled his signature, muttering, "You're insane if you think you can run this place." Emily pocketed the keys he slid across the table. "Watch me." By noon, Lux Bistro was hers. She stood in the dining room, the weight of the moment sinking in. This wasn't just a restaurant, it was her battlefield, her victory. She gathered the staff, cooks, dishwashers, servers, in the empty dining room. As of today, she announced, "I own Lux Bistro." Gasps turned to cheers. Michael, the sous chef, punched the air. "Does this mean we can finally tell a Mrs. Hamilton where to stick her complaints?" Emily's lips curved into a sly smile. "Wait for lunch. It's going to be memorable." She handed Sophie a sealed envelope. "Give this to the Hamiltons after they order, not a second sooner." Then, with a glint in her eye, she slipped into her old waitress uniform. One last time. The lunch rush was in full swing when the Hamiltons arrived. Mrs. Hamilton swept in, her gaudy emerald dress catching the light, while James trailed behind, tapping his Rolex impatiently. Sophie seated them at their usual window table, her smile tight as a wire. Emily approached, tray balanced, her expression the picture of professionalism. "Sparkling water, ma'am?" Mrs. Hamilton didn't bother looking up. "You're still here. I thought they'd have fired you by now." James smirked. "Enjoy serving while it lasts. Dad's buying this dump next week." Emily set down their drinks with deliberate care. "Not quite, sir." She took their order, Foie gras, lobster bisque, a $300 bottle of Chardonnay, her pen moving swiftly, her face unreadable. As she turned to leave, Mrs. Hamilton called after her, "Don't mess this up, girl. We're not as forgiving as your boss." Emily paused, her back to them. "Actually, ma'am, there's been a change in management." She nodded to Sophie, who glided over and placed the sealed envelope on the table with a flourish. Mrs. Hamilton tore it open, her eyes skimming the document inside. A bill of sale, Emily's signature bold at the bottom, her face drained of color. What is this?" James snatched the paper, his voice rising to a strangled pitch. "This is a joke. You bought this place?" Emily calmly unbuttoned her apron, folding it with precision. "Your reservation has been canceled. Permanently." She signaled the security guard, a burly man named Tom, who stepped forward. "Escort them out, please." The dining room fell silent as the Hamiltons erupted. "You can't do this," Mrs. Hamilton shrieked, her napkin falling to the floor. "Do you know who we are? We'll sue you into the ground," James added, his face blotchy with rage. Emily leaned in, her voice a quiet blade. "I know exactly who you are. Customers who just got banned from my restaurant." Tom ushered them out, Mrs. Hamilton's heels skidding on the polished floor, James's phone tumbling from his pocket and cracking on the tiles. The door slammed behind them, and the dining room exploded. Staff clapping, diners whistling, someone shouting, "Good riddance!" Emily picked up a stray $2 bill from the floor, dropped it into the staff tip jar, and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For the first time in years, she felt free. By evening, the city was ablaze with gossip. "Waitress buys Luxe Bistro." Hamilton's tossed out like trash, socialites whispered over martinis, and local blogs churned out headlines. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this." JH, she blocked it without a second thought. 3 days later, a health inspector stormed in during the dinner rush, his clipboard brandished like a weapon. "We've had serious complaints about pest infestations," he announced, loud enough for every diner to hear. Emily didn't flinch. "Inspect away. We've got nothing to hide." She led him to the spotless kitchen, where Michael stood grinning beside 6 security cameras, streaming live to Instagram. "Say hi to our 75,000 followers," he called. The inspector, caught off guard, mumbled an apology and left within 10 minutes. Then came the online onslaught. Fake reviews flooded review sites. "Mold in the soup." "Waitress turned owner is a fraud." All posted by accounts created hours earlier with initials like EH and JH. Emily's response went viral. "We don't serve bitterness here. Try therapy instead." Sabachuk Hamilton fail. A week later, Mr. Charles Hamilton himself appeared at the restaurant's entrance, his tailored suit straining over his furious bulk. "Name your price," he spat. "This place was promised to my wife." Emily unlocked the door, her expression cool. "It belongs to my father now, and to every person you look down on." She handed him a flyer for the Clara Carter Culinary Academy, a free program for low-income women, set to launch in the restaurant's unused banquet hall. "First class starts next month. Tell your wife she's welcome to apply." His face purpled. "You'll be bankrupt by Christmas." Emily shrugged. "I'll take my chances." That night, as she locked up, a figure emerged from the rain. Mrs. Hamilton, her makeup streaked, her designer coat replaced by a cheap raincoat. "My bridge club, they've blacklisted me. They won't come here without me." Emily studied the woman who'd once made her scrub a table for a single water droplet. Then she flipped the open sign to closed. "Find a new club," she said, and walked away. A year later, Luxe Bistro was more than a restaurant. It was a beacon. The dining room buzzed with new energy. Sophie, now head manager, balanced business school with her shifts. Michael's signature chocolate torte landed a feature in Gourmet magazine, and Thomas, his health stabilized with new medication, greeted guests like a proud patriarch, his oxygen tank tucked discreetly away. The monsoons came early that year, painting the city in shades of silver and gray. Emily stood at the restaurant's windows, watching rain streak down the glass, when the door chimed. Mrs. Hamilton stood in the doorway, soaked and shivering, clutching a crumpled "Help Wanted" ad. No pearls, no haughty tilt to her chin, just a woman stripped bare by life's reversals. "My husband left," she said, her voice barely audible. "Took James to Europe." "The scandal. Our debts." She swallowed. "I need a job." The kitchen staff froze, their eyes darting to Emily. Michael raised an eyebrow as if to say, "You're not serious." Emily crossed her arms, studying the woman who'd once called her riff-raff. "Can you knead dough?" Mrs. Hamilton blinked, caught off guard. I can try." Emily handed her a baker's cap. "You burn it, you start over. You show up late, you're out, clear?" Mrs. Hamilton's hands trembled as she took the cap. "I taught James to treat people like garbage," she whispered. "Now I'm the one thrown away. That's my punishment." Emily thought of Clara's note. "Never let them clip you." She saw her mother's face, not in anger, but in quiet strength. "Then start earning your redemption," she said. "One loaf at a time." Mrs. Hamilton nodded, tears mixing with rain, and stepped into the kitchen. 18 months later, Luxe Bistro was unrecognizable, not in its decor, but in its soul. The Clara Carter Culinary Academy had graduated its first class, with Sophie now mentoring young women from the city's poorest corners. Michael's desserts were the talk of the culinary world, and Thomas, stronger than he'd been in years, hosted a weekly storytelling night, sharing tales of Clara's courage to pack tables. One evening, as Emily balanced the books in her office, Sophie knocked. "You've got a visitor." Emily stepped into the dining room to find Mrs. Hamilton, now Evelyn or Auntie E to the staff, arranging pastries for the community table, where local kids ate free every Sunday. Her hands, once adorned with rings, were dusted with flour, and her smile was tentative but genuine. "I wanted to thank you," Evelyn said, her voice steady, "not just for the job, but for seeing something in me I didn't see myself." Emily nodded, the weight of their shared history settling softly. "We all get second chances, Evelyn. What matters is what we do with them." The headline in the city's top paper read, "From Server to Savior, Emily Carter's Restaurant Redefines Redemption." A photo captured the heart of Luxe Bistro. Emily laughing at Thomas's 65th birthday, Sophie accepting a culinary scholarship, and Evelyn teaching a group of teenagers to pipe frosting at the academy. The community table overflowed with faces, young, old, rich, poor, united by food and second chances. The menu featured a new dish, Second Chance Samosa, filled with grit, grace, and a hint of karma, served with a side of hope. Morale. The world may push you down, but courage and a touch of justice turns the tables.